that you've gotten a good view of my KC-02, let's talk about the internals and externals.
Whenever I do enough work on an airsoft build, I like to give it a nickname. I have nicknamed this one Shrike. The base gun is a KJW KC-02, which I'm pretty sure is modeled after the real-world Ruger 1022.
First off, we'll start with the externals. You know, when I field my KC-02, I do not use green gas mags. As pretty much all of my gas blowbacks go, they are hooked up to HPA taps. So I don't like buying a bunch of gas blowback mags and then HPA tapping all of them. It's a pain to reload. You only get about 30 shots. So I love to hook my gas blowback mags up to high caps once they're HPA tapped. So this is a standard KC-02 mag. Got your HPA tap on it, so I can hook it up to my external airline. I've got a garter, rubber, gas flow buffer, whatever you want to call it. And I have an A+ ramjet valve here. This ramjet valve gets me slightly lower FPS than regular high flow valve modded valve. I do notice a greater consistency and accuracy with this valve as opposed to the stock valves modified or the stock valves themselves. As for the ammo feed itself, the magazine is hooked up to an M4 M16 Vietnam style mag. It's short, so it doesn't really get in the way of operating the gun, because if I had a regular length M4 mag, it would just be ridiculously long and would get in the way of going prone. This is short enough so that it does not interfere with that. It is fed into the KC-02 mag from a spring, and I dremeled off the whole front ammo holding place that was originally on the mag. To reload this mag, all you have to do is open the trapdoor and dump BBs in. So to reload this gun, I just carry around vials of BBs that hold about the same amount as the magazine. It is very comfortable to reload. It is not bad at all. It might sound like a pain, but it's actually really convenient. It does look a little silly, but like I always say, I'm not terribly into realism in milsimming. I just like to shoot people without getting arrested. Or hurting them, of course. So it works quite well for my purposes. Now for optics, since I usually use this as more of a counter sniper or DMR build, I usually run a scope with it. The scope I typically use is a Leapers 3 to 9 times rubberized. I think this scope might have actually been discontinued. It's relatively old, but it still works great. Normally, I leave it set at about 6 times magnification. Reason for that being is that's right about the sweet spot where I still have an alright field of view. However, I can still track my BBs out for the entire flight path, just to make sure that I can adjust for windage and elevation at the longer ranges. Some people aren't really sure why you'd use the scope with airsoft. It's not because you have trouble seeing targets within your range. For me, I use the scope because it allows me to see my BB's flight path from beginning to end, so that for the longer range shots I can see, if I need to aim a little to the left or right or up or down for windage and elevation. And this absolutely beautiful stock, absolutely beautiful. This was custom made by hand for me from Tearing Carving. I did an amazing job with it, absolutely exquisite carving work. If you want, they make stocks, custom stocks for the KC-02, VSR, probably a few other guns. Highly recommended. It was great to work with. Pretty good price. I will not tell you the price I paid for this because I do not discuss prices with custom work. The stock is just, I just love it. It's absolutely beautiful. It looks like pie crust. It makes me hungry every time I use it. Absolutely wonderful. Nice basket weave. I love it. So let's talk about the internals now. Yeah, to make going over the internals a little easier, I've gone ahead and more or less pre-disassembled my KC-02 here. So let's go over the many upgrades I have in this gun. First of all, the trigger block. For the trigger assembly, the only upgrade I actually have in here is an increased Tokyo Marui PX4 hammer spring. Interestingly enough, the Marui PX4 hammer spring is pretty much the exact same dimensions as the KC-02. So if you can manage to track down an increased PX4 hammer spring, it'll work fine. However, that's going to be relatively difficult to find. Otherwise, Mag, I believe, makes a trigger or a hammer set. It comes with some reinforced hammer and hammer bar and trigger spring, 150% hammer spring, not trigger spring. I should probably pick up one of those kits just for the reinforced parts eventually, but other than that, my trigger setup is stock. I haven't even installed any of those, reinforced steel parts. I probably should do that eventually, but my idea is I'll do that when the parts break. Fortunately, I'll probably do that anyway because they'll probably be discontinued eventually, or at least difficult to find. Now for the bolt carrier setup, I have a purple anodized Rogue Works bolt here. Very nice bolt. When I had installed this bolt, I actually had to remove my magazine catch, which I believe normally goes here. My horribly deformed magazine catch was bent out in a way that the bolt didn't quite like, so it got caught on that. So I had to replace my magazine catch to get that to work. Other than that, this part fit right in and has worked great. Inside my air nozzle here, I've got a Kevin Forney CNC. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, but it is a CNC explosive style piston head. I can put an O-ring on. The piston is great, gives me a really good air seal on my air nozzle without being too tight. As you can see, it still retracts with the spring. However, it gets a really good air seal. This bolt is very streamlined. I'll go ahead and put links in the video descriptions where you can find more information about the bolt and piston. See if you can pick one up for yourselves. Overall, both of the parts work quite well. I'm very happy with them. If in my KC-02 you disassemble the bolt, in my nozzle I use my 3D printed high flow valves. There'll be a link in the video description to where you can check out more information on these and how you can get one yourself. And also that video contains a guide on how to disassemble and install it. Here's also a better look at the Kevin Forney piston. Smacked it with a hammer there, so it's a little bent, but that shouldn't matter. It's got vents to expand the O-ring when gas is charged into the chamber. My camera will not focus. Also, on this little pin in the back here that holds the nozzle return spring, I put a little bit of gasket maker around the edges to hold the pin in and provide an air seal, because otherwise air can leak out through there. So that's just a little bit to increase the seal. Here's another look at the beautiful purple anodized bolt carrier from Rogue Works. A great bolt carrier. My only it has a great fit. My only gripe is the edges are a little sharp. You could probably radius them with a file yourself. And the fit is perhaps too good, as it really holds on to this pin. So usually takes a lot of force to bash the pin out, which is probably good for most people because then you don't have to worry about the pin coming loose. But for someone who changes their cylinder valves like once every couple of weeks, I always feel like I'm about to smash my fingers with a hammer. I also have TSC, I think this is the Type B. What is this thing called? The bolt, is it cocking handle? Yeah, that's it. To get this to work with my gun, there was a little bit of material here that I had to Dremel off. Other than that, the recoil spring here is stock. I don't think anyone makes an increased recoil spring. Also, I have the, I think it's Future Energy or TSC, I think it's Future Energy buffer pin. This is like the regular pin, except it's made out of rubber instead of metal. So it makes the gun a little quieter and just helps the longevity of your gun because it absorbs more of the shock. As for the hop-up and inner barrel setting, or setup, I've got the AEG compatible VSR chamber. And might sound a bit contradictory, but for those of you unfamiliar with the chamber, this Chamber allows you to use AEG barrels and VSR buckings with the KC-02. Put some information in the video description where you can check out more information on these chambers. I also make one that works with VSR barrels with VSR buckings. As for Shrike's inner barrel, currently I am using my stock Real Sword Type 97 barrel. It's 6.04 millimeters by 492 millimeter length, but this barrel is not stock anymore. It's been lapped down to 0.5 microns, and it's also R-hopped. Also use my custom 3D printed barrel spacers, information on them in the video description. But I do believe that is it for the internals of my KC-02. Also, I have this suppressor, which is just a barrel extension. Obviously, suppressors don't really do anything in airsoft, especially not with a gas gun. You don't want to put a foam-filled suppressor because that can cause backflow, which can give you a whole world of problems. But that is it for the overview of my KC-02. If you want to see a shooting demonstration, I will upload one of them soon. By the time you watch this, it may already be available, so go ahead and check the video description for that. And check out my channel if you want to see more crazy builds or some pretty cool airsoft combat videos. Thank you for watching, and you take care.